Well, g'day everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about, well, Canon, say the R5 and the R6, the overheating issue that has been reported all over the place. And I wanted to sort of give my opinion about that after I take you through some what we think of the facts at this stage until the camera is officially released. And then I'll talk about what I think about that in real life. And also I wanted to show what the latest rumors are for the a7S III to see if people really should hold off on doing anything at this stage until they see what Sony releases in the coming weeks. We expect it to be within the next, few weeks. So it's going to be very, very close until this camera is announced, and then we'll sort of have a clear understanding of what's going to happen. But let's first of all look at the Canon overheating problem. Now, I noticed Petapixel this morning showed this article. Now, there's a whole article that they're showing here, but the interesting thing is that when you're talking about the recording time of these cameras, let's look at the R5 here, and we'll look at what the 8K recording is. They're saying it's at 30p, you're going to get 20 minutes. At 8K 30, you're going to get 20 minutes. At 4K 60, no crop, you're going to get 35 minutes. And at 4K high quality 30p oversampled, you're going to get 30 minutes. So that gives you roughly the timeline before that will shut down. Now, the issue is that they're talking here about 23 degrees Celsius. So what's that? About 70 odd degrees Fahrenheit, low 70s. So that's room temperature they're talking about here. Now, obviously, if you're going to shoot out in daylight and in sun, particularly say in summer, like here in Australia when it gets very hot, if you're in the US and it's hot, any country where it does get potentially very hot, those times are going to be dramatically cut. Now, before we go any further, I noticed that Pro AV has also had an interview with a Canon rep. And this is the interview for that. First of all, she's going to talk about the overheating in the R6, and then she'll start talking about the R5. So let's have a look at the R6 part of the interview now, where she talks about the overheating, and we'll look at that now.
Let's just go over some of what overheating looks like with the R6, shall we?
So when you're recording 4K 60, because obviously it is oversampled, you are looking to get around 30 minutes. Obviously, as I said, these are all just guides depending on the conditions and where you are and how long you've been using the camera before recording. So yeah, you're looking about half an hour for 4K 60. 4K 30, again, because it's oversampled, it's 40 minutes.
Okay, so now that she said that, let's have a look at what she's saying about the Canon R5.
Down, standby, not recording, it is still doing something. So there is still, the temperature is still increasing. If you have the camera in your hand, you're going through the menus, adjusting loads of things, or going through playing back videos, stills. The camera's temperature is going up.
The interesting thing too is if you look over here at the recovery time, this is the part really that I think is more of an issue, and it's something that you're more going to have to see if this will fit in your workflow. That if you're shooting in 8K 30p, this is with the R5, you have to wait 10 minutes for it to recover, and the recording time after that is only 3 minutes. If you wait 20 minutes, then your recording time after that is 8 minutes. If you record 4K 60, the recording time after the standby is 10 minutes, and then you can record for another 10 minutes after that. So you can see that there are still issues with the R6 as well with overheating, and you just have to that sort of matches your job requirements that you're going to use, whether you think that it then would be usable for events and things like that. So I just thought that was interesting to share. So going through those issues. No, it's not talking about 1080p though, and this is one thing that I did want to talk to you about, was that I think if you're dealing with 1080p, there may not be any issues at all with overheating, because I haven't been able to find anyone talking about that yet. So it may not be an issue. Now, the way that I tend to shoot with Sony cameras, I can shoot completely unlimited recording times now with the latest Sony cameras, and they don't shut off with heating. They did early on, but now they don't. And I haven't had a Sony camera shut down well, now for over 12 months, and I've gone through very, very hot summers shooting full weddings with them and things like that. So there's no issue anymore. There used to be, but there doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. So I would expect the new Sony camera to not have any issues at all. So you just have to make a judgment whether looking at those Canon figures that I gave you is good enough for how you would like to shoot. But having said that, I think Canon also have done an amazing job, because I'd prefer to have that feature in the camera, like say 8K, that you can only record for a short period of time, than not have it in there at all. Remember, there's no reason why you have to use that feature, but it's there if you do ever want to use that feature. And who knows what Canon may be able to do with, say, firmware upgrades and things like that. Remember, Sony did add firmware upgrades where they've given you things like being able to turn on an extra feature that lets you go past that initial heat warning, and therefore the camera doesn't tend to shut down. So we don't know how these will be improved in the future. And I think that's an important thing to understand. You may be able to, say, get an R6 or even the R5, shoot in 1080p and be able to shoot a whole wedding and not have any issues. There are some other things, though, which I think you need to understand too, is aliasing filters have been put on, anti-aliasing filters have been put on the camera as well. So you need to work out too whether that sharpness worries you, and also not having, say, AI or recording in the R6 is also an issue. So there's things there that you do have to look at. Personally, I think I would wait to see real world reviews before I pre-ordered them, just to make sure that they do fit your needs, or try and get one. Try and rent one, and then you could try it yourself and make sure that it fits your needs. But how does this compare, say, to what we're hearing with the a7S3 or the rumours that are coming out? So I thought what we could do is have a look at some of the latest rumours that are coming out here. So some of the rumours that they're talking about now with the a7S3, they're saying now it's going to be a 12 megapixel sensor. And in a lot of ways, I think that's great. What Sony have said, they did say that they were no longer concentrating on the low light aspects. And I think, to be completely honest, all of the cameras now, like the a7 III, the a7 R3, the a9, the a7 R4, all can work in unbelievable low light. In fact, very, very close or better in some circumstances than what the a7S II had. So I think the days of worrying about the low light sensor now are gone. I still would probably expect this camera to work better. It's still going to be a 12 megapixel sensor. Now, I think that's true because the Sony rep did say that it was going to be big pixels. So I would think that was probably going to be the case. It could be, though, that they use another sensor like 18 or 20. We're not sure yet, but the rumors are that it's going to be 12 megapixel sensor. That's going to be great for low light. The other thing too is I think that is also going to give us amazing dynamic range. So I think we're going to get that. And that Sony product manager also said that the S wasn't standing for low light capabilities anymore or super. It's going to stand for super quality video. So I think they're going to really be pushing that type of thing as well. But this is the first sort of rumors that we're getting now coming out. They're saying it's going to have unlimited recording. So unlike the Canon, which I showed you down here, had recording limits, which was 8K was 20 minutes, 8K 30 was 20, 4K 120, which we now know is going to be 15 minutes, 4K 60 no crop is 35 minutes, 4K 60 is 25, 4K that was high quality was 30 minutes, 4K 30 not limited by heat, so that may record permanently. I'm not sure if there was still a time limit on it though, but that looks like there's no heat limit on that at all. But we would expect the Sony cameras to have unlimited recording without heat, because I've heard there is going to be a passive fan inside this. Another rumor that's come out as well is that it's going to have a lot of awesome tech. They're not saying exactly what that is yet, but they're saying the body design will be similar to the a7 RV. Now, I do expect the body to be bigger, but I think the design is probably going to be very similar, which is really nice. I like the design of that camera when I used it when I went all around the US. Because this is probably going to have passive cooling, I would expect the body, though, to be larger. The other things too that we know or we think that is going to come out, it's going to have the world's highest resolution EVF. It's going to be 9.44 million EVF. Now, that is an amazing feature if you're doing things like manual focus and things like that, where you like to look at critical focus. And I'll expect the refresh rate and everything else to be amazing in that as well. So that really is terrific. They are saying it's going to be passive noise-free cooling system. Now, there could be a compromise in weather sealing, and that's something else that you have to understand by doing that. Whereas Canon have gone for a totally weather seal type body, which you could take out in the rain and everything else. We don't know how this passive system is going to work yet, so that's still going to have to be seen. It's going to have dual UHS-2 card support, an announcement in July. Another thing you also have to consider too about the Canons, you can't record dual video onto both camera slots, and I think that is a real downer for those cameras if you're dealing with weddings. I do like to record video onto both slots in case if I had a card that fails, and I think that is something that needs to be fixed from the Canon side particularly, so hopefully Canon can fix that in firmware, but whether that adds to heat and it's going to cause other problems, we're not sure. Another announcement too from Sony here, they're saying that it's going to have a fully articulating screen as well, which is terrific. And if it's anything like the ZV-1 or the ZV-1, that works very, very well. But I am hoping that not only does this have an articulating screen, that it also, for the first time, gives us a full touch screen that we can utilize all the features from that screen. That's one area where Sony have been very, very lacking behind the other manufacturers like Nikon, Canon, Fuji, etc., Panasonic. That's one area where they certainly have to improve their technology. And lastly, here they are saying the recording limits of this. It's going to record 240 frames per second, 4K 120 frames per second, 10-bit 422, and 4K 120 frames per second raw over HDMI. So if you're going to something like a Ninja or something like that. So overall, it looks from the rumors like this is really going to be an amazing camera. Now, I suppose there's a couple of things that you have to think about when you're looking at this. If it is only a 12 megapixel sensor, it's not really designed to be a fusion camera. This is designed to be really solely for video. And I think that's amazing, and it's certainly a camera that I would get. But if you were dealing with wanting to have a really good all-around fusion camera, which is video and stills, the Canon's probably is the way to go. Something like the R6 probably will be the best sort of like fusion camera that's out there. If you want the real high-end specs, you'd go with the Canon R5. I think at this stage, my advice would be to wait. If you are a Sony shooter and you're thinking about Sony haven't given you what you need and therefore you might jump onto the Canon bandwagon or whatever, I think I would wait to just see what Sony have to offer first. There's a lot of things that need to be answered at this stage. Remember, at this stage, we've only seen the cameras being reviewed by ambassadors, and obviously they have to push the Canon agenda, and we know that, and that's something you do have to take into consideration. So I probably would wait to see how these cameras react in real world reviews, and therefore you'll get a full idea about whether they could be used for, say, doing weddings or events or whatever you wanted to use it with. Again, I have to say that I'm not bagging Canon. In fact, I think they've done a great job in adding all these features into their cameras, and like I said, I wish Sony would do that. I would love to have 8K as a feature that I could use if I needed to, but obviously and turn off if I don't need to. Remember, it's always better to have it there than not have it there at all. It does future-proof your camera as well. I'd love to know your opinion about all of this. Please leave it in the comment box down below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.